Good morning and Happy New Year. I'm Taylor Wilson, and today is Monday, January 1st, 2024. This is the Excerpt. Today, we give an update on the latest violence in Gaza. Plus, we look at an uncertain 2024 for Donald Trump, and it'll be a crucial week for SB 4 in Texas. Israel killed another 35 people in central Gaza yesterday in its latest strikes on the territory. Israel's unprecedented air and ground offensive has killed nearly 22,000 Palestinians and injured more than 56,000 others. The violence has sparked a humanitarian crisis, with a quarter of Gaza residents facing starvation, according to the United Nations. Israel's bombardments have also displaced around 85% of Gaza's 2.3 million residents. Israel continues to say that it wants to destroy Hamas governing and military capabilities after an October attack when militants killed some 1,200 people and took hundreds more hostage in Israel. Israel's military says 172 soldiers have been killed since it began its ground offensive in Gaza in October. Israel is under immense international pressure to stop its assault on Gazan civilians, but Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Saturday that the war would continue for many months. Meanwhile, the U.S. military said yesterday that its forces shot and killed several Iran-backed Houthi rebels when they tried to attack a cargo ship in the Red Sea. It's the latest in a series of similar incidents that Houthis say aim to end Israel's violence in Gaza. 2024 is shaping up to be a year of uncertainty for former President Donald Trump, from his legal issues to the question of whether his support will hold ahead of the presidential election. I spoke with USA Today national political correspondent David Jackson for more. David, thanks for hopping on.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, David, you wrote about some big uncertainty in the new year when it comes to Republican frontrunner Donald Trump. Let's start with his legal issues, as we so often do, and whether or not he'll actually go to trial in 2024.
Of course, those are the biggest reasons for all the uncertainty. We've never had a major presidential candidate who's been indicted, period, much less indicted in 4 separate cases. And the biggest mystery of all is whether Trump will actually go to trial on any of those cases before Election Day in November of 2024. You know, he and his lawyers are trying a variety of pretrial maneuvers to try to delay all of these trials, and he's actually had some success at the appeals court level. Appeals courts have entered various rulings that will definitely delay at least some of these trials. So the big question is whether he'll actually have to go before a jury anytime in the next 10 months.
And, you know, David, we've talked a lot about what Trump's legal issues mean for his support and how at times they seem to have helped him. But now that'll be put to the test with actual voters. What's the expectation here?
The polls say the voters are going to stick with him, that many of his supporters, particularly the hardcore Republicans, feel like that the cases are all political hit jobs, and so they've kind of rallied around him. So if the polls are any guide, Trump is going to do very well. But there's some concern, even within the Trump campaign, that now that we're actually going to vote, that people may have second thoughts about Trump and whether all the drama that surrounds him is really worth it. In particular, Nikki Haley, who is campaigning heavily in New Hampshire, is making an issue out of all the drama surrounding Trump and hoping to persuade some people to move off of him and vote for her. And there is some concern in Trump world that that could happen.
And, you know, Trump made the decision not to debate this year. How important will this question of debating be in the new year surrounding him?
I think very important. I mean, it was kind of a risky decision for Trump to skip the 4 debates that we had so far in this cycle. But it hasn't hurt him in the polls. But I think the upcoming debates in Iowa and in New Hampshire could conceivably hurt him if he skips them, because they're being held right before people actually vote. And that could well annoy the voters in those states who are used to being courted and paid attention to. And the fact that Trump might skip these debates could be problematic. You know, he skipped a debate in Iowa 8 years ago, right before the Iowa caucuses, and he wound up losing them to Ted Cruz. So I guess it's conceivable there could be a repeat of that.
Of course, David, it's not just the criminal cases surrounding Trump. There will also be some 2024 developments in the civil suits. What should we keep an eye on here?
There's an ongoing bank fraud trial. There's going to be final arguments of it in early January. That's an important case because the judge has already found Trump of committing civil fraud in terms of inflating his assets. So he's going to assess damages that could really hurt Trump's business world. So that's I think the first thing we're going to look at. But also on January 15th, the same day as the Iowa caucuses, he faces a second defamation trial from the writer E. Jean Carroll. You'll recall that she's the one who won a $5 million judgment against Trump for a sexual incident back in the 1990s. So she's now suing him for defamation again. And she's got a very good chance to win that case. And so there could be even more damages and more damaging revelations about Trump that could come out of that case.
David Jackson, thanks for the time, David.
Right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Chief Supreme Court Justice John Roberts said in an annual report yesterday that federal courts are exploring how to use artificial intelligence. In the report, he touted the technology's promise, but also warned of its limitations. He said machines cannot fully replace humans in the courtroom, but added that federal courts will need to embrace the technology for other tasks. Also in the report, Roberts avoided reference to ethics concerns that have encircled justices for months. In November, the court adopted a code of conduct for the first time in its history. That came in response to a series of stories this year detailing lavish travel that Justice Clarence Thomas accepted from GOP donor Harlan Crow, among other revelations. You can read more from the 2023 report with a link in today's show notes. The U.S. Department of Justice said last week that it will sue Texas if the state enforces a new immigration law enacted last month called SB 4, and that Texas has until Wednesday of this week to let federal officials know if it will go forward with the planned enforcement of the law. I spoke with USA Today breaking news reporter Claire Thornton for the latest. Claire, welcome back to the Excerpt.
Hey, Taylor. Great to be here.
So let's start with some of the basics at the top, Claire. What is SB 4?
SB 4 is giving more police, law enforcement in Texas, broad powers to arrest anyone who they suspect may have crossed the border illegally. And Democratic lawmakers in Texas have warned that that could lead to racial profiling. After someone is arrested, state judges in Texas would have the power to deport someone, which has always rested with federal officials.
Yeah, and they outlined some of these concerns in a letter. Has Texas responded to the DOJ letter? And, what do supporters of this law say?
Texas Governor Greg Abbott has repeatedly said in recent years that President Biden is not doing a good enough job of enforcing U.S. immigration laws. That's why Abbott has said he is sending migrants on buses out of Texas. That's part of why he initiated Operation Lone Star a couple years ago to send more officials to the border. And that's why he said that he stands by SB 4. Greg Abbott is saying that there needs to be more enforcement of immigration law. And now he's trying to do it under state jurisdiction.
And this letter from the DOJ follows a lawsuit from the ACLU. What did they argue and what's the latest there?
El Paso County and the ACLU also filed a lawsuit over SB 4. ACLU lawyers said that Abbott's SB 4 is patently illegal and that it violates the federal government's exclusive immigration powers. And immigration law is about international relations too, and foreign relations, how one country interacts with people from another country. That is why it is determined at the federal level, so that the U.S. can act with one voice in response to migrants from another country.
Claire Thornton is a breaking news reporter for USA Today. Claire, thanks as always. I'm sure we'll hear from you again on this developing story.
Thanks, Taylor.
The long-awaited simplified FAFSA form is here. The Department of Education officially launched the new free application for federal student aid form in recent days, about 3 months later than its usual October 1st date. For the 2024-2025 school year, FAFSA will be reduced to just 36 questions, down from 108, including detailed financial information, and it'll be easier to import income data from tax records. Along with the pared-down form, the Department of Education changed its formulas so more students would be awarded Pell Grants, which don't have to be repaid. It will also no longer include a sibling discount, so families with more than one child in college may get less aid. The goal of the new FAFSA form is to make it easier for students and families to get money to pay for school. But its late release may have complicated things for some, and schools won't receive information they need to determine aid until the end of January, according to the Department of Education. Thanks for listening to The Excerpt. You can get the podcast wherever you get your audio, and if you use a smart speaker, just ask for The Excerpt. I hope you have a happy and healthy 2024, and I'll be back tomorrow with more of The Excerpt from USA Today.